You are watching a Fact TV presentation of the town of Swanzey.
Being 7:09, I will call the meeting of the Swanzey Zoning Board of Adjustment for June 19, 2023 to order. I'll ask Beverly to call the roll and to read our agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Keith Tebow,
Here.
Brian Rutgers, Bill Hutwalker, is not present. Ann Karasinski,
Here.
Lisa Thorne,
Here.
Eric Helio, he's not present. Wayne Lechleiter,
Here.
James Ward,
Here.
Adam Lahern.
Here.
The Town of Swansea Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting agenda for June 19th, 2023 is as follows. The minutes will be reviewed. There will be a regional impact vote, followed by public hearings. ZBA 23-009, special exception application, Barkley Enterprises LLC on behalf of SET Property Holdings LLC for a special exception from Section 5, Article B 2A of the Zoning Ordinance to construct an open bay vehicle wash facility at the existing commercial property located at 93 Monadnock Highway. The subject property is shown at tax map 18, lot 134 in the business district. The applicant has requested this public hearing be postponed to the July 17th, 2023 regular meeting of the ZBA. ZBA number 23-010, variance application. Barkley Enterprises LLC has requested a variance pursuant to Section 5, Article B1 of the Zoning Ordinance for the installation and operation of electric vehicle charging stations at the existing commercial property located at 93 Monadnock Highway. Subject property is shown at tax map 18, lot 134 in the business district. The applicant has requested this public hearing be postponed to the July 17th, 2023 regular meeting of the ZBA. ZBA number 23-11, special exception application. Barkley Enterprises LLC has requested a special exception pursuant to Section 5, Article B2G of the Zoning Ordinance for a drive-through facility serving coffee, baked goods at 93 Monadnock Highway. The subject property is shown at tax map 18, lot 134 in the business district. The applicant has requested this public hearing be postponed to the July 17th, 2023 regular meeting of the ZBA. ZBA number 23-12, special exception application, TF Moran Incorporated, on behalf of FW Web Company, requests a special exception pursuant to Section 5, Article B2A of the Zoning Ordinance for a warehousing and wholesaling use at 471 Old Homestead Highway. The subject property is shown at tax map 34, lots 32 and 32-1 in the business district, rural agricultural district, and residential district. ZBA number 23-013, variance application, TF Moran Incorporated on behalf of FW Web Company, requests a variance pursuant to Section 3, Article Q1 of the Zoning Ordinance for a 33 stall reduction in a required number of parking spaces at 471 Old Homestead Highway. The subject property is shown at tax map 34, lots 32 and 32-1 in the business district, rural agricultural district, and residential district. Other business, regular meeting schedule amendment, and any other business as may be required.
To our minutes, we had been provided minutes for our May 15th meeting. Present at that meeting was myself, Brian, and Jay and Lisa. Entertain a motion on those minutes?
I move we accept those minutes.
Been moved and seconded to accept the minutes as presented from our May 15th, 2023 meeting. Any question on the motion? Again, this is myself, Brian, Ann, Jay, and Lisa. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Regional impact vote. Would a member of the, just, before I go any further, I think before we move forward, because do have one regular person absent, Bill
Yes.
Hutwell is not here, so I'll cede Adam for Bill on this. Now that I see that, so of those of myself, Brian, Adam, and for Bill, Ann, and Lisa, anyone care to make a motion on a regional impact?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that this particular application, or any other applications they're seeing here, do not rise to the, to being a regional impact.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Brian. Moved and seconded that the applications that were to take up this evening will not rise to the level of regional impact. Again, myself, Brian, Adam, Ann, and Lisa are voting. All those in favor of that motion, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Public hearing, we're gonna actually have to go through these first three and take a motion to postpone them. So, our first public hearing is ZBA number 23-009, special exception application, Barkley Enterprises LLC on behalf of SET Property Holdings LLC for a special exception from Section 5, Article B, 2A of the Zoning Ordinance to construct an open bay vehicle wash facility at the existing commercial property located at 93 Monadnock Highway. The subject property is shown at tax map 18, lot 134 in the business district. This applicant has requested this public hearing be postponed to July 17th, 2023, regular meeting of the ZBA. Again, myself, Brian, Adam in place of Bill, Ann, and Lisa are seated. We do need a motion to postpone this.
I have a question. So this will be the second time we've postponed it?
Yes.
Are any of those represented here? No?
I'm not leaving today.
I'm just curious if they gave a reason. Is there,
They did not give a reason.
okay.
Make a motion that 23-009, 23-010, and 23-011, all being for the same application for the same property, that we adhere to their request on all three applications to postpone to July 17th.
Mr. Efficiency. Do I have a second to that
Second.
motion? Thank you, Lisa. It's been moved and seconded to approve the request to postpone the public hearing. What's that? Did I say something wrong? Oh, okay. It's been moved and seconded to postpone ZBA case number 23-009, 23-010, and 23-011 until the regular meeting of the ZBA on July 17, 2023. Any question on the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So we're gonna get to work. We have two issues to take up on this property. The first being ZBA 23
Point of order, sir.
What's that?
Point of order.
Sure.
Did you want to let people know that if they were here for the Thomas property, they can...
Thank you, thank you. If anyone was here, obviously, for one of the first three applications, all regarding 93 Monadnock Highway, you get to come back later, so they can come. Thank you, Brian. See you next month.
Yep, yes.
What's going on, Big Red? What's going on, Big Red?
Not much.
Thank you. All right. So, ZBA 23-012, this is a special exception application. TF Moran Incorporated on behalf of FW Web Company requests a special exception pursuant to Section 5, Article B2A of the Zoning Ordinance for a warehousing and wholesaling use at 471 Old Homestead Highway. Subject property is shown at tax map 34, lots 32 and 32-1 in the business district, rural agricultural district, and residential district. It's a calico cat. Seated for this will be myself, Brian, Adam for Bill, and Lisa.
Lisa?
So, what are we gonna do? Tell us a little bit about business and how things are gonna work. Should we make it through this?
I believe you all have full design packages in your hands on the position this to the audience can see if that works.
We need multiple copies.
No, this is ours.
Are there just copies of the same
Yeah.
thing over and over again?
I think this is,
No, that appears to be different.
yeah, this is one of them is for different things.
Go ahead.
Actually, my name is Nick Dolan. I'm a licensed engineer and principal with the firm T at Variance. Joining me is Andy Gut, president of Greenleaf Construction, and we're both here on behalf of FWS for the aforementioned project.
This is the
So
more
you do have some plans in front of you. They show some proposed conditions as well as some existing. The graphic that I have up here just for the folks is the aerial map that was included as part of your guys' package, which was an 8.5 by 11, which essentially is really just showing the lot in its current position. The elements as far as what was previously developed there, that being the runway fun park, complete with mini golf, golf carts, and I believe beyond the building that was on site, there was also at one point a Ferris wheel. So a fun little spot, but at this point, we're ready to move on to something new, that being FW Web. And you could, he's just going to speak a little bit to FW Web and what we're trying to accomplish, and then I'll get us into the site itself.
So my name is Andy Macbeth with Greenleaf Construction. We're FW Web's construction manager. I've been working with Web for over 20 years. They have about 100 locations throughout the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic. So FW Web is a wholesaler of plumbing and HVAC supplies, basically 16 disciplines that they sell to contractors. The uses in this building would be wholesale for the self-serve office, a showroom, which I call display retail, and warehouse and outside storage. So that's a little bit about Web.
Very good, thank you, Andy. It's always nice when you have the opportunity to work with a company that's been around for over 150 years. They have some great empirical data that we have the opportunity to rely on, and that will be some of the information that we discussed here. So relative to the applications that are before you, I believe the first one that was read into the record and in the appropriate order would be the special exception in regards to the wholesale and warehouse use. As specifically written within the ordinance, this is a permitted use by special exception, which we always take to mean under the right conditions it's appropriate for the given district in which it is located. The vast majority of this lot is the business district. A small corner of that being the northeast is actually the residence district. As you can see on the plan that you have in front of you, there's a potential for some storage to be in that given facility, but the vast majority of the project is really located to the west, as far as how that building is laid out. Now, given that we are on Route 32, and I'm going to flip my graphic just so the folks here can see what I'm talking about, and this column's not doing us any favors as far as location. So, proposed storage, outdoor storage to the east, the building itself to the west. Andy was kind enough to explain some of the different elements that are located within this building, that really being the self-service area, the office area, the showroom, and then the warehouse itself. Working with both Andy and FW Web in regards to this overall facility and their needs, it's nice to be able to have really just some background on how those existing facilities have run and how those needs would be conveyed here. You can see our parking is located directly to the west and south of the building. There are 2 curb cuts along Route 32, so given that it's Route 32, that will be under state jurisdiction as far as the design of those driveways to make sure it's in keeping with their expectations. Loading docks are located on the east side of the building as presently shown, which provides good access to the outside storage. So In looking at this plan relative to special exception criteria, a few items that are supposed to be good to review. It's our understanding there's really 4 items that are under your jurisdiction relative to this use. The proposed use is similar to one or more of the uses already authorized in the district and is an appropriate location for such because. So the wholesale warehouse use is integral to FWS business. The sale of plumbing, heating, HVAC, and industrial supplies sold in the store, sold mainly to contractors. The items are sold in large quantities at lower prices than that which are paid for by the consumer. The wholesale warehouse use is similar in nature to the Cold River materials on Auburn Access Road. That was shown pretty well on our overall graphic that was included as part of your guys' package. We've got the gas station here, post office, and then just beyond a rather sprawling campus that continues to the south, which is the aggregate facility. Similar in the state that it processes aggregates and sells their product to the contractor, then pass on that cost to the consumer. We would say the location is appropriate due to state highway access and the fact that there are no residential abutting parcels. And if I can, even draw you back to your actual business development or your business district definition. It's almost a carbon copy essentially of what we're proposing here. It talks about highway access being appropriate. It talks about larger uses. So when we think about the business district, that this is an appropriate use at this location. So your second item relative to the special exception, such approval would not reduce the value of any property within the district, nor otherwise be injurious, obnoxious, or offensive to the neighborhood. We've already documented that there is an aggregate use of substantially larger size to the south. I'm trying to make eye contact with everybody as best I can here and follow. We have a gas station that's directly located across the street. So the warehouse, the wholesale warehouse use is primarily internal to the proposed building and does not directly impact the budding butters. Allowing the wholesale warehouse use would not reduce the value of any property in the district, as they do not store or sell any harmful or noxious materials that would be offensive or otherwise injurious to the neighborhood. FW Web maintains its properties well, and from the exterior, their building appears to be a normal retail facility, other than providing discount items in bulk to contractors. The internal model of the building is similar to a hardware store, where the contractor can run in and pick up items at the self-service area, as well as order larger items that are available and or stored in the warehouse. So I think one thing that's important is to make sure that we understand that this is relative to the use, not necessarily the look. The planning board is going to deal with any architectural features or any of those types of accoutrements as far as what the site's going to look like. Our task tonight is really to look at the use in and of itself to make sure it meets the criteria of the special exception. Item 3, there will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicle or pedestrians because the wholesale warehouse use generally services contractors from the surrounding areas. This use is much less intensive than a typical retail use. The warehouse is integral to providing larger quantities of product to contractors, and the warehouse will allow for more storage of new materials, minimizing the frequency of deliveries necessary to maintain stock. This reduces the tractor-trailer traffic and the potential for vehicle and pedestrian conflict. I would go on to add that there is no pedestrian access in this immediate vicinity, and being that this is a state highway, DOT will be the governing authority on those curb cuts so that we can make sure we have that added level of safety, that added level of review relative to how traffic will be managed on this property. Item 4. Adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the proper operations of the proposed use. Within the application itself, we state that we'll obviously have FW Company's standard prototype site includes bulk storage of materials for sale in the warehouse, so this isn't typical for them. They maintain the facilities and staff necessary to operate and provide quality customer service, and if they operate similar facilities elsewhere, there's no issues. We have adequate ability to site a water well. We have adequate ability to site a septic. Existing utilities are adequate for our intended use. If there is one alternative mitigating factor, it is we are close to the airport, so they are going to govern the height of our structure, but we're already in dialogue with the airport for that need. So when we look at whether or not the facility will have what it needs to use. There's no added impact to the community for what we're proposing to do here. So we'll look at those four criteria and state that we feel that this is in keeping with those expectations. We'd be happy to answer any questions in regards to that proposal.
Before we get to questions from the board and the public, it's a public hearing, we'll open it up in a second. Were there any internal responses from directors that, or
The only comments we received were from Conservation Commission, and they're included in the packet. There are concerns over sensitive species that may be present in the area, and concerns about the change to the rural view state. But we don't actually have any regulations about the view, so that's not a criteria you guys can consider.
This is a public hearing. If anyone is here and would like to speak, we'll allow that at any time moving forward. So if anyone has any concerns now, feel free to voice them if you choose. As we go around here, we'll have our own questions, board members for the applicant, I'm sure. And that doesn't mean that as a member of the public, you're not allowed to weigh in. So at any point in time, if you have anything to say or questions you might have as we move forward. Questions from the board? Seated or not seated,
I have a question. So you're not manufacturing anything? It's all coming in and going out?
Correct.
So there's not any, okay. No more waste than you'd expect, since everything leaving is still gonna be packed in whatever it was in. So, not a lot, okay.
Is there, are you using the existing septic or adding more for bathrooms and stuff like that? It's up there,
It'll be all new.
all new?
Yeah.
How many employees might be on site typically, or what's the expectation?
I have that offhand. So 11 was the initial estimation, with hopes that it would grow to as many as 27. So we would design an infrastructure to accommodate that next build out.
As many as how many?
As many as 27 employees.
I got one question for you.
Absolutely.
In the, I just congrats real quick. So, in your layouts here and drawings, you have one site that you spoke of quickly about proposed outdoor storage as a potential use of that piece of the property. Do you have any idea as to what types of things would be stored on site?
Very good question. All in Indians.
It's all new products. It's things that can live outside, like oil tanks, propane tanks, soil pipe, PVC pipe, those types of things. Things that don't need to be stored inside. But it's all new products. And it will be behind a fence.
And if I'm reading this right, that's basically where the putt golf is now?
Yes. Yep, correct.
Mark Scalera, so you say it's behind a fence, visible from the road. You can put up a 6-foot fence, a 10-foot fence, but if you have shelving, outdoor shelving out there, it might still be an eyesore. Also, you'll be undercover as well.
No cover. There won't be much in the way of shelving or racks out there. There might be a few along the building, up close against the building, but in the outside storage yard, there won't be any shelves. We can consider privacy slats, to increase the lack of visibility.
And those final details would be certainly something we would review with the planning board.
Yes.
So my other concern is just the 43,000 foot square foot structure itself. I mean, that's huge. And, it's a business district. I think what you're proposing is a little bit far reaching for business. I think it's more commercial. And you're looking to also go into both the residential and the agriculture and rural areas. Now, I know there's some regulations where you can go into them somewhat, but, I mean, it just seems like it's a pretty extreme structure going up in that area. Quite frankly, I'm not sure why that's even a business district there. Coming down Route 32, it turns into a residential district on both sides. And there's just this one little section that's a business district right there. And that's confusing to me when I look at how things are even zoned in town. So I think to even go beyond business district, making it bigger, allowing a variance there, I think it's just, I think it's obnoxious, in my opinion, so.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, you know, FW Web, I know their facility in Keene, they do a wonderful job. I just think it's the wrong location for it. But
Appreciate it.
nothing against the company. I'd love to go into their little room and see what they can help me out with.
Right. So this would be in addition to the FW Web showroom that's on Lower Winchester Street in Keene?
No, the plan would be to sell Keene and move here.
Move that here?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
How many vehicles a day do you get at the current location, and or what do you expect to have here?
I can get you the numbers, but I would say it's between 100 and 200. So, you know, Web is a low traffic generator. I know those numbers sound big, but you know, they're a pretty low traffic generator. So.
And it'd be our expectation as part of any site plan submittal, we'll have to appropriately document what traffic we would expect in the facility.
Are those actual customers or just people who couldn't turn left on Winchester?
All. Everyone. Yep, it's employees, trucks, customers, everyone. Yep. That's part of the reason the numbers, you know, sounds higher too. So.
6-day-a-week operation, 7-day-a-week operation?
6 day or 5.5, basically. The wholesale would be open Monday through Friday, 7 to 5. Saturday mornings, typically, especially the heating season. The showroom is by appointment, would probably be open on Saturdays too. So I guess 6 days technically. So, but Saturday is kind of a partial day.
You own the mini storage as well, correct, where you're located now?
Yes.
So would you be moving that as well?
No. I'm not sure that it's super active, to my knowledge. I think it's kind of winding down. And so.
Anyone else?
Do you have any numbers as to how many tractor trailers, deliveries come in and out of there?
Yeah, also pretty low numbers, probably 1 a day, something like that.
1 a day?
Yeah, it's pretty low.
And what about nights? Is there no deliveries after a certain
No,
hour?
not when they're closed, just during working hours. Yeah.
May I say something?
Oh, please, yes, thank you. Just identify yourself.
Yeah, I'm Sherry Domina, I'm Chair of the Conservation Commission, and I would agree with everything Mark said. This is what we put together as a committee, what you received on the paper, our objections to the project. You know, as Mark said, we don't have any problem with the company, it's just that particular location. We understand that there's no law in town protecting the view. However, to take what is right now just a really beautiful agricultural space, agricultural feeling space in town, and a special open space, and to plunk a really large building in the middle of it that's going to be painted bright red, and it will be impossible to shield. It's not something that you can put behind trees right there. That's not going to happen. So it's the entire, because of the lay of the land too, and then you're kind of looking down on part of the property. I feel like the entire property will be really, really visible. And we feel like that could be construed as something that's obnoxious.
as you're driving by for people. Also, we have concerns about certain bird species that use the grassland there. I did speak to people at New Hampshire Audubon, the NRCS, and one other local birder, who works for Moosewood Ecological, Stephen Lamont, and they gave me the list of species that have been seen in the area that have used that. I myself have seen meadowlarks nesting there, or at least present there day after day after day one season on the power lines right next to the post office, so I took it that they were nesting there. So they do exist from time to time and use that property, and it's that grassland is a really important one for the whole region because large areas of grassland are really, really rare. Increasingly in New Hampshire as our farms have reverted to forests. So it's something that we're going to be nibbling away at the edges of, and while we understand that it is a business district, it, well, A, doesn't feel like one, and B, has operated as a rural grassland.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair, are there any elements that we need to respond to? Okay, so I'll take care of the last part first in regards to various animal species that could be located within the area. We are required, because we're over 100,000 square feet of impact, to do a wildlife habitat assessment. We are required to do a Natural Heritage Bureau data check, which is for rare and endangered species. We are required, as part of our EPNY for construction stormwater discharges, to file what's called an IPAC report with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, all looking for potential concerns with wildlife and what the project would or would not have an impact on. So I can assure you, from a state and federal level, there are many eyes that review those components of the project. And if a concern is identified, typical to any project, you're required to work with those resource agencies to resolve that concern.
Thank you.
As to the first part, I'm really going to defer that element to the planning board. As far as the architectural design of the building or otherwise, that's going to be their responsibility to work with us and us to work with them to make sure that what this facility looks like is appropriate to the area. What we're really looking at is not that look, but the use itself, the warehousing. Is that appropriate for where we are, given that we have a very large aggregate facility across the street, that this is currently the home of a defunct fun park. And I'm sure someone could make the equal argument that, well, that's an eyesore. It's very much in the eye of the beholder.
I'm struggling a little. This is being presented to us as a warehousing and wholesaling use.
Yes.
But I see this as much of a retail, at least the showroom that's on it that currently exists, and having personally gone there to buy a small part for something. It's, you know, warehousing appears to be sort of a benign, it does nothing much moves things on, you kind of hold things for a long time. You know, and wholesaling seems to be a lot of things going out at once to me. So speak to that if you can about why this isn't being considered, isn't being presented to us as a retail observation as well as wholesale and warehousing.
The retail piece is about 5%. You know, in the self-serve, if you go in and buy a part, you know, that's about 5%. There's no prices on anything in the self-serve. It's set up like Nick described in his presentation. That, you know, the more you buy, you get different pricing. So that's the wholesaling piece. Also, Webb delivers a lot of the product on their trucks. So if you're building a house or there's a project, you know, it gets delivered directly from Webb to the job site, and it doesn't go through, you know, someone's van. And they're selling to contractors who in turn sell to an end user. So that's why it makes it wholesale. The showroom, like I said before, is what I call display retail because it's by appointment. It's very low traffic. I mean, if there's 3 or 4 customers in there, that's like screaming busy. So, and the way that typically works is your plumber or your contractor would refer you to that location if you're redoing your kitchen or your bathroom or whatever. They would say, go check out the fixtures here. you potentially will pick them out, and then they will go on the plumber's account, who will either pick them up or have them delivered to the job site of your house, and then the plumber will install them. So, you know, it's not, most of the sales are going through someone else, not directly to the end user, so.
But what you just described is for every sale, there's at least 2 times on the site, the contractor and the potential.
Potentially, yeah. Or it goes on a web truck and gets delivered. So there's a significant amount that, you know, that happens.
To speak to it more just universally, in order to establish the appropriate use categories, we did sit down with your staff, review the intent of how the business operates, how it would be used, to make sure that we had the correct definition used as far as what this is intended to be.
So can I just,
This
does that mean,
just identify
Vicky
yourself.
Scalera, does that mean I personally could not walk in the door off the street, or I could?
You could, but they won't sell you a boiler or something you need a license to install. So if you go in and say, I want 10 feet of PVC pipe, sure, they'll sell it to you. But like I said, that's 5% of their business, so it's a small percentage.
So I think it was perhaps Lisa that asked if you had, how often tractor trailers come in, and that was once per day?
Yep.
But these, how big are the trucks that take this stuff out?
So
you have deliveries.
24-foot box truck.
Right, so that's regular, that's.
Yep, twice a day probably, they have 2 routes a day, yep.
Okay, and there's two curb cuts. I'm trying to remember because when the merry-go-round or when the Ferris wheel went in, we had concerns about the traffic on that corner.
Mm-hmm.
So I think these are farther down.
Yes, they are.
And that one's opposite the post office probably. Okay.
Other questions? Comments? We talked about 2 curb cuts here. I approved the original, was here at this board, approved the original golf course and raceway, if you will, that went in there. And I know we instructed that particular applicant that we really didn't want them to use that at all. It was too close to this corner. This goes from 40 to 30 right about here, right at the edge of there, and literally that's what the sign is, it goes to 30. So there was a concern then about automobiles going on and off at that location because of the traffic. There's obviously very, very intense business right here. You have the post office the other way, it all generates a lot of traffic. So I have concerns about this, particularly when I envision a tractor trailer going in or out, or someone coming in with a trailer, a contractor with a trailer having a couple of oil tanks on the back, pulling out onto Route 32 right here. There was concerns right from the jump when people were doing sort of a recreational business where I don't think that anywhere near 200 cars a day ever entered that site back on and off. So I'm not sure how this gets picked up, but as an applicant, and one of the things that we have to determine is that there'll be no nuisance or serious hazard. Not nuisance and serious hazard, but nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians. And I have a real problem with that particular question. So I don't know if you can speak to that at all. It was a concern back when, time ago, they respected that for us, meaning no one really used that entrance at all the time that it was there. And even when the fun park was there, when they changed from owners to brought more intense use on the property, they weren't using that. So if someone would like to speak to that, I'd appreciate it.
Certainly. So what I'm going to do is really point us in the direction of who the improvement authorities are. The DOT, we have showed that we have all clear sight distance in both directions that's suitable for this intended use. They will not approve curb cut unless we show that this is a safe intersection. So from the second part, as far as being concerned about the safety of other vehicular travelers, I think that's perfectly clear that that would not create an issue. Is it a nuisance? That's a really far-ranging question. Is it a nuisance to put an appropriate amount of traffic on a road? I'd say no. Is it a nuisance to be exceeding the volume to capacity ratio of the road? Yes, I'd say it would be. The amount of truck trips, the amount of vehicle trips that are being discussed, these are typical of a business. You can look other locations in town as far as perhaps similar uses as far as traffic generators, and this is very much on the low side. Now, relative to that nuisance element as well, we do have to go through the planning board approval process to make sure that where these curb cuts are located and how this site will be used is consistent with your site regulations. I would have every expectation we can be held to that standard, such that this use, which is allowed by special exception, because we are in a business district. One of the things that I really went back to was this district is also intended to accommodate traffic generators of such size as to be more appropriately located on a highly accessible highway network. That is what we are. As long as we can do so safely, that is not a nuisance. It's an appropriate use of the property. And that would be our contention, is that we need to go through those steps. We go through planning board, as well as the DOT, to show that these curb cuts are appropriate. If for some reason they state that they are not, we will have to revise them until such time as they will approve that location, or otherwise we don't have a project. So I look at that criteria that's written within the special exception, and I feel that those other governing authorities and other agencies review and approval of this does not create a nuisance use. It's consistent and appropriate for your zone in which it's located.
Any other questions of the board? Go ahead, Ann.
One question, and I don't know if this came up with the Ferris wheel. I think it did because of the height question, is whether the airport landing is an issue at all. You'll have to review with them the height of your buildings.
Yes.
And, what surprises me is that I believe that building used to be a restaurant years and years ago. The Alps restaurant. And they made them sell it and they didn't close it so they could, I guess, improve the runway or something.
Okay.
And now all of a sudden, because there were houses too on the other side of the road, weren't there, in the fields there? There were houses that got, taken and then got rid of. So I'm just wondering if something changed, like with the FAA is approving this sort of thing.
So we are going to be required to file with a Form 1 and Form 2 that identifies the height of the structure and where it is in relationship to glide path, as well as the runways itself. We can't get, unless we can get the FAA to approve the height of our structure, we're kind of at a dead end. So Greenleaf is already working with a consultant, Farland Johnson, who's working with the FAA to make sure that the height of the building.
Well, the Ferris wheel was approved.
So I kind of jumped back to that. They had a blinking light on the top to make sure it was consistent with the FAA requirements. And that's one of the things we have to think about is the FAA is not necessarily to say, no, you can't do that. Yes, you can do that, and this is how you can do so safely.
Right.
Any other questions?
Jim, do you mind if I borrow that piece of paper, the obnoxious, please?
Yeah.
Members of the public are still short at it.
Just one more thing to add, just something that, it's been brought up a few times by, members of the public here. And I just want to make sure we addressed it, and not went over it, but, the word obnoxious was used a couple of times in terms of, describing this particular project or the building or what have you. And we were, I don't think reminded's the best word, but we were shown by the Supreme Court of the state of New Hampshire a very narrowed definition of what that means specifically. And actually Jim has it right here. And so as a board, we are beholden to really just look at this particular language as it relates to it. From a planning board perspective, there's a lot more latitude in terms of look and feel and so forth. But as a ZBA, this is what we're pushed towards. But I just want to make sure I at least address what you said, because it's come up before in non-related applications and so forth. But the term engineers obnoxious or offensive asserts whether a proposed use might be demonstrated to be potentially nuisance to the surrounding neighborhoods due to traffic, which has been something that we've talked about, unsanitary conditions, excessive noise, vibrations, vapors, toxic emissions, and odors. evidence that has been proposed, special exception use may exhibit one or more of these conditions could justify ZBA to conclude the proposed use does not merit a grant of the special exception because that would be injurious, obnoxious, or offensive. So, you know, while it's not black and white written in our ordinance that this is a specific definition, the Supreme Court of the state of New Hampshire has reminded us that this is how they view it. So this is the light that we should look at these types of applications. So I just want to make sure I address that.
Okay, I just have one comment, or maybe it's sort of late too, but thank you. I appreciate that, and I actually understand that.
Yep.
And I actually think you did a good job of addressing those issues, which may be different in my opinion, but it's just very interesting to me, and this is just a general comment, that this board will say, this is what we do. And then as soon as it goes to the next board, they say, well, we can't do that because they approved it. So that's just my general comment. And the other thing is, my personal opinion, and I don't know whose job it is, but I would really like to see the slats on the fence. That's all. I really would not like to see.
I'd like to see what?
The slats on the fence. I really would not like to see the outside storage stuff.
Like a,
That's
like a
my
privacy
personal
screening? Is that what you're?
opinion. Yeah, and I don't know if that's this board's job or that job's board. That's my personal hope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's planning board, but that's certainly,
We'd be happy to make sure that discussion happens with the planning board.
And you said that.
And there are instances that the board will make decisions on, and they will have caveats that say these has to follow
Yeah,
these.
yes, and I have.
But we are really struck on the special exception to these 4 criteria, so we'd have to be able to tie something to those pieces. But it has happened before. We have made special exceptions with caveats, so we'll take that into consideration, definitely.
So, Mark Scudder, so this building, it's just the side of it going into the rural agriculture area, I mean, is that not the zoning board? I mean, you know, the special exception is for the use that they want within a business district. Well, that special exception use is not allowed in the rural agricultural district or a residential district, to my knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah,
So that's the far-reaching part of it, I comment on.
Mark, I believe Sarah told us that and I read it in here too, before I came tonight, when the 2 districts overlap, you can go 30 feet into the least restrictive district. It's allowed, a 30-foot overlap, is that correct?
That is correct.
Are we not going further into the?
I don't think it's more than 30 feet.
I don't
I think
believe,
that's 2 acres.
I don't
right?
believe any part of the actual development is in the rural agricultural district. The project developers can speak to that.
Yeah, at least according to the drawings that have been presented to us and presented to the board, and what's also being shown there.
Yeah, so if you show right there, yeah.
That's which corresponds to your maps.
Yeah, it seems that the structure and the actual, site itself seems to fall within the business.
It's part of a setback is what the 30-foot is, if I understand correctly. Is the setback that's in the, there's a setback from the residential district that's, or the setback from the building edge?
The part of the outdoor storage area, the
Mhm.
corner of it, goes into the residential district where it wraps the
Right.
sharp turn on Route 30.
And there's that 30-foot right there.
So the section to the left of the parking, like that field there, is that part of the 2 acres that we're talking about, that you,
This would be part of that 2 acres, this is not a portion. of
that's
the
not
property.
your property there?
And all of this work would be done within the business district.
Okay.
Bless you.
That's just that's just for stormwater?
It's a graphic location where how stormwater could be managed, yes.
You couldn't find a good location on Route 10 or 12. It's 432, you've probably heard me say it before, it's like the Route 100 of Vermont in Swanzey. It's your key road, once you get past, nanotech, it's just a rural feel, and we just keep on allowing this stuff, and I don't blame you guys, you find a hole
I guess I'll ask one question more. This business could have been sited in the industrial district, and instead we chose this area. Is there a reason for that?
We tried that. This is our second try in Swansea, and the land was deemed unsuitable.
Uh-huh. For this business?
Yes.
The land in question, all of the land in the industrial park?
We chose the largest lot, and we still could not get it to work. Due to existing issues with the site, wetlands, all of those things.
Okay.
Lots of retaining walls. We tried hard, spent a lot of money too.
As a site civil engineer, to find a lot this size, doesn't have wetlands, was kind of exciting. It's difficult nowadays. Although this is obviously impacting the area, the environmental impacts are essentially null. We'll have appropriate stormwater management that are really non-exist today. So I think this could really be perceived as a benefit or an improvement over a lot of the elements that are out there now. And that really the advancement of stormwater management requirements in the last 4 or 5 years, more or less, in the last 10 or 20, are significant. So I think this would be a nice benefit.
Anyone else? Anyone, a member of the public, before we close the public hearing, so it has your, after that, they kind of have to shut you off. We understand. Appreciate it, thank you. And anything else before we close the public hearing? Is that no? Okay. All right. We'll close the public hearing on the request for a special exception pursuant to Section 5, Article B2A of the Zoning Ordinance. Any comments before we get to the questions?
I think this piece of land is interesting because Ann's right. We allowed the state to tear down those houses and rip down all those trees along the runway just so they can turn around and plant more trees, because that's how we do things here. And that's where we were gonna, it had been proposed to put the fire station was on that lot, and the department had decided they didn't want it there. But the FAA had cleared it for 45 feet in elevation, so it's a buildable site, it's in the business district. I mean, I agree that I would rather it not be in the middle of our town with a big red building, but unfortunately, as a zoning board, we only have jurisdiction over those 4 questions, and that's the end of our legal abilities. The rest of it falls on the planning board. So, but I also want to make sure that I acknowledge that Vicki had made a really good point that from the outside looking in, it does get a tad irritating. One board says, "Oh, that's not us; it's this other board." You go to the other board, and they don't feel like doing it, so they say it's another board. Then you get in this death spiral, which is better left for the city like Keene, where you can't get anything done than here. So my understanding, just so we clear it up, and you raised a really good point, Adam, I appreciate that, is we only have the 4 questions. That's it. That's all we're legally allowed to, all right? So, but I do think this is an interesting piece of property. It just keeps getting battered around year after year after year. And I remember going into the Alps, but they closed down a long time ago, so.
Yeah.
And that building has just been sitting in a deteriorating state ever since.
Any other comments or questions? Adam?
I just want to reiterate what you stated, Keith, which was, the actual special exception. Is it the correct, format of business? Is it a warehouse? Is it a retail establishment? And, knowing a little bit about FW Web and what goes on in Keene and so forth, it's kind of a unique, situation. It's not your typical Home Depot or, Hamshaw lumber or something like that, where you have tons of people coming in.
Right.
From a consumer perspective, which would really increase the traffic volume tremendously, on the hours. But it's kind of a unique situation it seemed to do warehousing, and it seems to be contractor based, and it seems to be a lot of wholesale. And that's my experience of seeing what's happened in Keene for years. So I just want to make sure that I agree, when I was looking at going, this is kind of retail, right, so.
Yeah, right.
But I guess I could be convinced that it does have a more unique, business presence than other retailers.
Right, certainly not any one of those things. It's some retail, it's some wholesale.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little bit of everything. Which is, you know, probably one of the reasons they're successful in business in general. Right?
I do remember that they looked at the Sanford Drive Industrial Park, and that would have been a great spot right off the highway but that's so wet in there on both sides. It's unfortunate.
It is. Anything else before we get to the questions? So, just to remind myself, I've got Adam sitting for. Okay. So we'll go to the questions. Do we agree that the proposed use is similar to one or more uses already authorized in the district, and is it an appropriate location for such a use? This will pick on Adam right off.
Sure. Well, I'll kind of build on what I was already saying, is that, you know, the proposed use here is one of warehousing, and I think there's a good portion of that use being conducted on the site. You know, so that is a use that is approved within the, you know, the parameters of the special exception for a business district. So I'd say yes from that perspective, and, you know, from an appropriate location perspective, it is the business district, with these uses defined as uses to be done. So from that perspective, our own ordinance, I would say yes. So that's my answer, yes.
Brian?
Yeah, I just want to read that in. So according to the taxpayers approved uses for a business district, right, our daycare facility, gas station, repair garage, body shop, motor vehicle dealership, wholesale, warehousing or manufacturing facility, industrial park, vehicle wash facility, self-storage facility. So this is what the taxpayers said they want in the business district. It's a business district, and so whether I like it being there or not is irrelevant. The law says, at least at this point, that it can be there, so yes.
Okay. Ann?
I'll say yes for the same reasons. When I look at the businesses that currently exist along that business district, they're quite similar to what's already being done. So yes.
Okay. Lisa?
I also say yes, for the same reasons it's appropriate for the district.
Okay. In the district too. So I tend to agree that the proposed uses are similar to those in the business district, but I am struggling with the location. They're gonna need to have at least 2 curb cuts to run this. And so for what they're looking to do, I don't see this as used as an appropriate location. So I'm gonna vote no.
Sorry, you voted no?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we agree that such approval would not reduce the value of any property within the district, nor otherwise be injurious, obnoxious, or offensive to the neighborhood?
Before you go there, a point of order,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman. Would you give me your rationale again? I didn't record it properly. And since it is a no vote, I'd like to have the reason put into the document.
Yeah, well, I in essence believe that the use that they've proposed here, which is a combination of wholesale, warehouse, and retail, in my opinion, is not an appropriate location for that use.
Okay.
All right. So do we agree that such approval would not reduce the value of any property within the district, nor otherwise be injurious, obnoxious, or offensive to the neighborhood? Brian?
Pick on me, huh?
Brian.
Well, so the first part, I gave mine away, so I'm gonna peek on yours, if that's all right. What are the answers to the test? I certainly wouldn't reduce any values. We don't have any testimony either way that it would improve or decrease the value of the property. Although if they leave the Alps restaurant there as it is, what, no?
No, I agree. Yeah.
It's certainly going to increase the value of the surrounding properties just from what is there and dilapidated.
True.
Now, for the rest of the adjectives, I can only say it would be offensive to me if I were living in that neighborhood, but I'm not. But using the Supreme Court's definition, I don't see that it would be injurious, or there's no evidence that it would be any of those things, except that it might be offensive to the neighborhood for some of the taxpayers. So I say yes.
Okay, thank you. Ann?
Yes, I don't think it will be, I think it's appropriate.
Okay. Lisa?
Yes, I also think it's not going to reduce the value of homes in that area.
Okay. Adam?
I'm going to also kind of split this up and say that from a reduction of property values, we don't have testimony that defines that as a one way or the other, as Brian has stated as well. And in terms of injurious, obnoxious, offensive, I think there's a potential for there to be traffic patterns that are not being experienced currently on 32 from that location, but I don't think they're enough of a difference from what's across the street in terms of much larger trucks that are going directly on Route 32, although be it a further down on the road with better more sight. So from that perspective, you know, as long as the DOT of New Hampshire is comfortable with the curb cuts and it's evaluated in the planning stages and looked at for safety, I'm going to say yes.
I also want to tag on to what you're saying there, that I think it's great, all things being equal, that this is not down by where the Alps is. Because that would be too much on that bend. Speed change, and the aggregate plant across the street, but having it way down by Keith and Kevin's access to the sand pit. At least it's down at the other end of the property.
Okay. Boy, I mean, I agree that I don't see a reduction in any value with anywhere within the district for this, and we have no evidence. Injurious, obnoxious, or offensive, I probably can knock off obnoxious or offensive pretty quickly to the neighborhood, because I know what I know what their retail store, their warehousing, and where they are now looks like, and it's not that. And I guess the actual approval of what we are talking about here would not be injurious. Again, I have a problem on 32. In this location, just that for reasons I've already stated, the change in speeds, right on that corner, I'm concerned about sight lines, lots of traffic coming from across the street, and others entering in and off the post office. Plus, there's another road right here that comes off. So, at this end of the property, which is in and of itself going to be a problem. So I'm going to have to say that I'm going to vote no, that I don't believe that this would, I believe this could be considered injurious or obnoxious to the neighborhood. So I'll be in the no column. Do we agree there'll be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians? And we'll start with Ann.
I have confidence in the DOT's decision-making process to assess danger and traffic flows. And if they have, any concerns that they have will be addressed by the planning board. And I don't think there'll be any nuisance.
Okay. Lisa?
I agree with Ann. I mean, I have some concerns about tractor trailers turning in here, but the DOT will be in charge of all of that, and they will make those curb cuts adequately.
Okay.
So, I'm a yes.
Thank you. Adam?
I'm gonna say yes as well. Pedestrian traffic at this point or juncture is minimal at best, seeing that there's no existing sidewalks or such pedestrian traffic on this section of Route 32. And then secondly, I think you're dealing with vehicles that are, normal to business activities and you're seeing the road every day. So I'm gonna say yes, that there's not additional serious hazard by their particular use of the property.
And then myself, again, for the same reasons that of the business in this area, the difference in speed limits going from 40 to 30 on the corner of this property, the overall density of the development on this site, I believe we could be creating some serious hazards to vehicles. Not so much pedestrians, because there isn't so much in pedestrians here, but certainly vehicles. There's a lot of vehicles that come through here. So again, I'll be in the no column on this one. And then lastly, do we agree that adequate? Yes.
Did you ask Brian on that question?
He didn't like the way I was
Did I miss you,
voting, so he
Brian?
skipped right over me.
I thought you had. Go ahead. I thought I had to do it again.
I think it's really hard to get a curb cut from the state on the state highway, and the fact that they preliminarily granted permission for 2 curb cuts means the state's done some homework on that stretch of road. It is a busy stretch of road. I agree with the taxpayers that are here. We got 3 huge apartment complexes going to be built on that road. We got the schools on that road, post office. It's a busy road, it's a busy highway. The fact we don't have sidewalks on it is just unconscionable to me. But my answer is yes.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. I'm sorry. All right, move on to number 4. Do we agree that adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the proper operations of the proposed use? We'll go with Lisa.
Yes.
Thank you. Adam?
Yeah, I'll also agree with Lisa here. You got the outdoor storage, it's defined, warehouse defined, showroom, office, septic, water treatment, stormwater treatment, and at least looks like somewhat of a network of roads to be able to access everything, so yes.
Thank you. Brian?
I agree with that.
Ian?
I agree with Adam, plus I've visited several of their facilities and I've seen them in operation, and I would trust that they're gonna.
I'll concur here that I do believe the facilities for the proposed use, the proper operations of the use would be adequate. So I'll leave a yes on here. So we've been through the questions. Entertain a motion.
Before we do that, Keith.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm thinking of what Vicky said, and I've been at planning board meetings where they brought up things like traffic, and they said, well, the zoning board approved it, so there's no traffic issue. And I wanted to be sure the zoning board looks at the traffic, and I don't know how we could do that. I'm not voting on this particular thing, but I'm wondering before you vote, whether you vote with the understanding that the planning board will look at the DOT results and so on, and not just say, well, the zoning board approved it, so we don't have to worry about it.
Okay. That's been noted.
Okay?
Yeah, I think that's a good note for Sarah to pass on, because traffic is not part of our charter.
And it's right, and we haven't gotten any DOT reports, we haven't gotten anything presented to us, because we're not supposed to.
Right, nor would we, we're a zoning board, so they.
So, but I've been at the planning board meetings where they say, well, the zoning board passed it, we don't have to consider it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
So I don't wanna have that happen again. Okay?
Well, that's noted, and
Thank you.
we'll bring that up, so. Okay, back to the vote. We've been through the questions pretty significantly and fully. I would entertain a motion on this application for a special exception.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Ann.
I'll make a motion that for ZBA 23-012, for special exception that we approve, this as
Okay.
it stands.
The second on the motion?
I'll second you.
Moved and seconded to approve the special exception as presented. Any question on the motion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate so by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Yea, nay. So,
Nay, nay?
nay, yeah.
Nay, nay, nay.
So it, motion carries 4-1. We'll move on. To the variance application. So, ZBA number 23013, variance application, public hearing required by Moran on behalf of SW Web Company. Thank you. Request a variance pursuant to section 3.
We're not done.
We're not done with
Got another question?
We're not done.
Yeah, this is the
Same
second.
here.
Oh, there's
Oh,
two, gets
it. Second part, yeah.
We need
parking.
two approvals.
This is
You
the
can read
part,
about it in the meeting minutes.
You can go if you want. There's a
But, you know, we're not
But you
done.
know my point.
whole nother ball of wax.
I can't get home until I follow Mark, so he can't leave yet.
All right.
No problem, I tried to let you out.
We get back on track. ZBA 23013, it's a variance application. TF Moran Incorporated on behalf of FW Web Company requests a variance pursuant to section 3, article Q1 of the zoning ordinance for a 33-stall reduction in the required number of parking spaces at 471 Old Homestead Highway. Subject property is shown at tax map 34, lots 32 and 32-1 in the business district. I'm going to again seat Adam for Bill, just for continuity purposes here. Any input from Sarah, from the town, from you folks on this?
The only thing
particular-
I would really say to this is, as you guys already said in the last application, this is kind of a unique business model, and it doesn't really fit within the parking ordinance, which is why the variance is requested. They can also request a waiver or a reduction in parking from the planning board for a 20% reduction, which, so if the variance is denied, they do have another opportunity to reduce parking, but they would not be able to reduce it by as much.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Again, this is a public hearing. We'll have a presentation from the applicant, and then we'll open it up to the public. Do you have a question?
No, I'll save it for later.
Okay. So, we're here to talk about a variance application relative to the reduction in required parking spaces.
Okay. Given we already given the prelude as far as what it is we're proposing here, I'll skip that portion. And if it's the favor of the board, just jump right into the variance application criteria.
I'm sorry, yeah.
All right, facts in support of granting the variance. Granting the variance would not be contrary to public interest because the proposed use is not retail sales to the public in the traditional sense of the word, but sales primarily to contractors working in the plumbing, heating, HVAC, and industrial sector. The parking calculations contained in the zoning ordinance apply to retail sales to the public, and as such are excessive in our opinion relative to this business model. FW Web's historical parking demand has capped through development of 29, wow, I guess keep your records, 29 different facilities that average one space for 1,046 square feet, or in this case, 56 spaces, based on a gross floor area of 58,085 square feet. Granting variance to allow the construction of 60 spaces in lieu of 93 spaces would not be contrary to public interest, as sales are generally directed to contractors. The proposed use does not draw much traffic from the public who would be visiting the Frank Webb Home showroom. The showroom accounts for only 7% of the gross floor area as proposed, or 4 spaces based on the historical parking demand. Whenever we're talking about the public interest, it really beckons to 2 primary items. Does this reduction in parking, and that's what we're talking about, not the use, but the reduction in parking, does it alter the essential character of the locality? Providing fewer parking spaces that are specific to this need and this business model would not alter the essential character of the locality. If anything, it benefits it. because we're providing less impervious surface, less stormwater retreat, and that they know by their market research and the imperial data that they have, that the parking that's being proposed here exceeds their needs. The second item we look at is, would the variance if granted threaten the public health, safety, or welfare? There's adequate provisions for parking. There's no foreseen need for this backing out into the street or otherwise. There's adequate room within this site. It's a 5-acre site now. We're adding an additional 2 acres for about 7. There's more than adequate parking to be provided within this facility. The second item, granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance because the spirit and intent of the ordinance is to provide adequate parking facilities for the use, which is based on empirical data. Due to the nature of the business model and its servicing mostly contractors, the reduction in parking is appropriate and will provide adequate on-site parking for the estimated future growth, 27 employees at full occupancy, and 4 spaces for the general public visiting the showroom. The remaining parking will allow for up to 29 contractors to visit the wholesale self-service area at any one time, which is substantial. It was great that folks have taken the time to check out other FW webs so to get a feel for how those facilities run. The parking that we're providing here is very comparable, and we have every expectation that the parking provided here is appropriate. Again, when we talk about spirit of the ordinance, it really goes back to that same criteria. Are we altering the essential character of the locality by providing fewer parking spaces? And would it threaten the public health, safety, or welfare? And our answer to both of those questions would be no. Item 3, granting the variance would do substantial justice because granting the variance would do substantial justice because it will allow the construction of only the necessary amount of parking spaces to accommodate the use, thus reduce impervious area and providing more green space. Based on FW Lab's historical parking calculations, proposed 60 spaces are more than adequate based on its calculated need of only 56 spaces, or 1 space for 1,046 spaces. When we look at the criteria of substantial justice, really the guiding rule of the factor of substantial justice is that any loss to the individual is not outweighed by gain to the general public is an injustice. There is no loss to the public relative to the amount of parking that is being provided here, as we've already provided data that shows that it's appropriate for this business model. Item 4. Granting the variance would not diminish the values of surrounding properties. Granting the variance would not diminish the value of surrounding properties because an adequate amount of parking is proposed for the particular use. Adding additional parking than the deemed required would mean more impervious surfaces, less green space, and parking in areas that would otherwise be left vacant. I'm sure we can see various businesses which are overparked. There's just parking spaces that are never used. I think the design as currently constituted provides a nice element of green space. It's going to provide an attractive site for us to ideally review with the planning board. Providing additional parking spaces that are otherwise going to be, that would remain empty, would not be appropriate. And in no means would it diminish the values of surrounding properties when we're looking at it as the sole version of providing fewer spaces than required by the ordinance. Item 5, I'll read the full thing. Little enforcement of the provision of the ordinance result in unnecessary hardship because the special conditions of the property will distinguish it from other properties in the area as follows. Literal enforcement of the provisions of this ordinance result in an unnecessary hardship because it would force the applicant to construct additional spaces based on retail sales to the public and warehouse space used to store products for warehouse. The additional parking would occupy more land and remain underutilized. Special conditions of the property is that the proposed use is sales of plumbing, heating, HVAC, and industrial supplies to contractors, which is unique to those adjacent uses that service the general public. In addition, the site soils are mainly sands and gravels, which recharge the groundwater. I think primarily we have Windsor soils out here, a system of 9 or 10 test pits. We dug a nice pattern and looking for the appropriate locations for stormwater. Consistent soils throughout with nice fine sands for recharge. And then adding an additional impervious surface where it's not required serves no purpose to the public or environment. A, how into the special conditions of the property is set forth above that distinguish it from other properties in the area. I, no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property because the calculation of required parking spaces for retail sales to the general public and typical warehouse space is far greater than the demand for a wholesale distributor that services contractors. No fair and substantial relationship exists between the calculation of parking independently for warehouse and retail space. The use is based independently on the business model, requires storage of product at a larger scale due to the volume of products that are purchased by contractors performing services for the public. So again, this very much gets to the business model of the applicant and what's being approved is specific to that. And two, the proposed use is a reasonable one because the proposed reduction in parking is reasonable based on the business model, the empirical data that has been tracked by FW Web, during the construction and permitting of 29 facilities throughout the Northeast. So we would look at this and say that, oh, yes, we're asking for a reduction in parking. But the purpose of the ordinance is to provide appropriate parking for the use. This variance does not frustrate the purpose of the ordinance. It's merely a relaxation to what's appropriate for this intended use. As we've discussed throughout the course of the evening, that this is a different business model, but relative to what's being proposed, we think the parking is appropriate. And if for some reason the planning board determines that something else is required, then we obviously have to deal with that at that time. But we think again that the amount of parking proposed is appropriate for this use.
Thank you. Before we open up the public hearing, any comments yet from the board, just general comments from the board? Okay. It's a public hearing. You have the public?
Mark Blair, I recommend you reduce the number of parking spaces as he's requesting and put up more trees, which is the planning board, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, although we appreciate the comment, we feel that should be ruled out by the planning board.
I'd stay longer with these chairs, they're just too hard for me.
All right.
I'm just having some trouble with the math.
The
math?
Yeah,
Yes,
let's work on the math.
The warehouse is 222,000 square feet, and that would mean 222 parking spaces on the calculation, right?
Or is this
Or is that,
25,000?
oh, 25,000, okay.
Yes.
Well, the lot's 34 to 32 or 222,000, but the warehouse itself is only, okay.
It's 14, 25.
Yep,
So I'm coming up with 70-something spaces total, 76. The mezzanine?
Yeah, because those are the finished spaces, so that adds to the warehouse square footage.
Okay, so you have 25,000 square feet roughly of warehouse, 14,500 square feet, 14.5 of mezzanine, for a total of 39,000 square feet roughly. So 39 spaces for that. And then you have the showroom at 4,100, which would you consider it a...
retail sale, I don't know, retail sale. That and the office are the same.
So 500 per square feet or retail?
250 for both the retail and the office. So if you add the retail and the office together, and divide by 250.
You get 16 for there.
Yeah.
And then office, okay. So how many employees, you guys said, I'm sorry, I didn't read that.
You said
11.
7 at full growth, we're gonna start with 10 or 11.
10 or
So
11,
the full growth is 5 to 10%. So we're planning ahead.
okay.
Mhm.
So,
So let me go back here.
I no longer have a problem with that.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
are you okay with the math?
So I have a problem with it. The only question is, it was 93 that you're requested to have now, and you want to cut it down by 33, is that
Or
right?
you think you are
30%.
supposed to have
Do you think
93?
the ordinance requires us at 93?
The ordinance requires 93 based off of the various uses. We're requesting 60, which is 4 more than our showroom says we need.
Office.
And if they were to go to the planning board and get a 20% reduction, that
That's
would
only
bring it down.
19 spots.
I know, but if that would bring it down to like 75 or something like
Right.
that.
That's correct.
So they're asking for a little more than that.
15.
So if we give you, hypothetically, we allow you to dump it by 30%, right, 90 to 60,
Yep.
easy math. Then you're going to the planning board and asking for an additional 20% down?
This is it.
So if the zoning board rules that this is an appropriate use of parking for this facility, then no further relief would be required through the planning board.
So in the section 3, where they talk about what the planning board can and can't do, they can allow a reduction of up to 20% of the number, provided an area is reserved on an approved site plan to accommodate the minimum number required off-street parking should they become necessary in the future. So hypothetically, should it become necessary in the future, do you have a place to put more parking spots based on what we're seeing here?
Given the size of the site, yes. If there was additional parking demands,
Like if it
there's
happened.
adequate space, yes.
Because when I'm looking at, when I look at your website and I think about the last 3 years when we were all home,
Working on home improvement projects, right?
a lot of this traffic is virtual now. People don't even come to the show. They go here and they look here. So, so of the 60, so 63 that you're looking for? 60. And
Yeah, 122.
what's that? Wow. So do
Maybe I'm
you
just not
think
doing this correctly.
you even need 60 right now, or that last strip you don't even put in
Self-storage at
if you don't
43.
need it? I'm just wondering, like as a burden on the business, if you knew you needed 60, or we're planning on putting in 60, but you really only need 40 for now, is that something that they could
Well, self
add
is not
later?
storage, it's like, that's.
You mentioned vacant spaces where things don't need to. If it's not
We're
needed,
proposing to install or to construct 60 spaces.
to start off the
To
bat.
start out, where 93 is required, and the planning board can allow a reduction down to 75.
Right.
In lieu of going to the planning board, we are asking for the variance to provide what, based off of those 29 stores, plus 4, and is what we believe to be appropriate for the site. To answer just the universal question, if we need to get up to 75 parking spaces, can I find a home on site? Most definitely.
Right, well, I'm just saying that, if, just like you haven't hired 27 extra, or 27 people, if you don't need 15 spaces, why put them in?
There's some economy scale during construction to build all those
Just
parking
do it
spaces
now,
at
ahead
once.
of time.
There is obviously the opportunity to either immobilize, but that would really be a decision of FWB Web on whether or not they were willing to disrupt
Okay.
existing business operations to install 15 more parking spaces. When
Gotcha.
you think about the cost of asphalt, it's by the ton. So the more you buy, the more
It
cost
cheaper
effective it
is,
is.
okay. That's right, you guys do the wholesale thing, so.
But no, I appreciate the idea though. That's a good idea.
Other questions? Going to the questions, we good?
No one had more questions?
No one had no questions.
Was there anything about the math that you guys,
I also think that they probably worked with Sarah on getting these spaces calculated.
We did work together. It was challenging trying to determine what the required number of parking spaces was, which is why it felt very appropriate for them to bring forward the model that they use on their other facilities.
Right.
Because the combination of uses is unique, and the type of products that are stored there take up a lot of space, so the building is larger than, at least in this community, we typically see, and our regulations.
Doesn't want to cover that.
Correct.
So what you're saying is that their historic demand of one space for every 1,046 square feet seems to be appropriate.
I don't believe they would recommend something that was less than appropriate for their facility.
We don't want people parking in the post office parking lot.
Correct.
The reality is, we haven't done our job if they have a facility that opens and all of a sudden they don't have enough parking. Their business model will fail if they don't have necessary parking. So it's only within their best interest to make sure they have enough.
we're not going to the questions yet, right? Are
No,
we
not- we
talking
haven't gotten
about
there.
what we're thinking?
We're still good.
Because when I'm thinking about this, and I'm looking at this unique business, every home in Swanzey has the stuff that they are selling. So I have 2 oil tanks in my cellar. I'm not sure I'm supposed to, but I've got 2 330s hooked together so I can buy lots of oil at once. But every home has something like that. Something from that they're selling is we all have. So it's all it's right here. It's important, so.
You're saying it'd be a service to the community?
I'm saying that, yes, I'm saying it's a service to the community.
And you wouldn't have to drive necessarily to get it, they deliver it, so.
Well, they don't, they bring it all,
Yeah.
so, yeah, I'm just saying it's gonna be somewhere, so.
Any other comments or questions? No?
Just one thought.
Yeah, please,
Mr. Chairman here, is that a lot of the conversations we typically have around parking spaces, just from the nature of the community of Swansea, tend to be about residential facilities and making sure that you have the appropriate, safety and, you don't have people parking in weird spots and so forth for their homes. This is a different use completely in terms of it. And, I'm just looking at the warehouse space alone. You got 25,000 and then 14,000 is 50 spaces for a building that's got nobody in it, so that alone. So I think, a reduction based on those does make some level of sense. So it's just an observation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that number is specifically. Is it what they're asking? But, our arithmetic here, you can make spaces from 90 to 122 depending on what you define things as.
Right.
I just jumped out and I got that number and I went with what Jim gave me and it kind of went back to where they were at. So that's my 2 cents.
All right.
And I've lived here for 30 years, and I get stuff from FW Web, and I've never been there on Winchester Street, ever. So, for the average retail, like you say, it's just not necessary.
So your business model is working. You want up.
All right, anything else? All right. We got closed. Things that have, things that haven't. Any questions before we get to the questions? Okay. Do we agree that the variance can be granted without being contrary to the public interest? And?
Yes, I think we've made, from what we've been discussing and what the facility is going to entail,
Okay.
I don't think it'll be contrary to the public interest.
Lisa?
Yes.
Thank you. Brian?
Yes.
Adam?
Yeah, I don't think the public suffers in the inverse of that. So yes.
Okay, I concur, yes. Second question, do we agree that the spirit of the ordinance would be observed if the variance were granted? Lisa?
Yes.
Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, I think Adam did a really good job laying that out, and I agree, so yes.
Okay. Adam?
Yes, I agree with Brian, agree with me. So.
General agreement all around. Ann?
Yeah, I'll agree also.
I would as well. The whole spirit of the ordinance is to have enough parking for the intended use, as was pointed out by the applicant, I believe. So I believe we're there with this one. Do we agree that granting the variance would do substantial justice? Brian?
Well, there's no evidence to the contrary that it would do an injustice to anybody, so yes.
Okay. Adam?
Yeah, I'll agree with the same kind of thought process. Substantial justice, I don't know. That's
Okay.
Exactly.
But in this case, I don't see the inverse true. So yes.
Ann?
Yeah, I don't think there'll be an issue. I'm a little surprised about the impervious area stuff, because my parking lot at work is designed to let the water flow right through it. So the materials are out there to accommodate it, so I don't know why more businesses aren't using it, so they don't have to go through all this other stuff.
Okay. Lisa?
Yes.
Would you like the variance to substantial justice? Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. I will agree. Could the variance be granted without diminishing surrounding property values? Adam?
Yeah, no evidence has been brought to the board that there would be a reduction of property value to parking lot spaces, so no. So I mean, yes, I would say yes. It could be granted.
Ann?
Yeah, I think it wouldn't diminish any property values. I live completely at the other end of the airport, and there's lots of buildings and lots of
Okay.
same things.
Lisa?
Yes, I agree with Ann.
Brian?
I think this is a good reason for us to buy 3 new fire engines. No? Yes.
Thank you, and I concur. Do we agree that special conditions of the property exist that distinguish it from other properties in the area? Let's see, Ann?
Well, I think it's a unique property. We've already talked about the changes in the speeds and the challenges of anyone who built there, and the previous people that have tried have been unsuccessful.
Right.
And I think the business model that's being presented here is unique for this area, and I also see that it's beneficial in that spot.
Totally surrounded by the airport, that kind of thing, so it is pretty.
The airport is a challenge in and of itself. That's why
Absolutely.
we would have more development if the airport were not.
All right. Lisa, do you concur that special conditions of property exist that distinguish it from other properties in the area?
I concur.
Okay. Brian?
Yeah, it's the only flat, wide open area left at the airport to build on, so that makes it unique from the other properties at the airport.
Very good. Adam?
Yeah, and I'll also add that the applicant even stated that, or there was testimony to the such that this property didn't exhibit many wetlands or any. So not covering it with tarred pavement and so forth, protect a little bit that's left on the property is not a bad idea, so
That's pretty.
I think it distinguishes itself in its own right, so yes.
Right. Let's see. Owing to the special condition.
Hold on, what about you?
Oh, yes, no, I'm sorry, thank you. Got off into the other questions. I vote yes, this is a pretty unique property in a lot of ways, so. Owing to the special conditions of this property that do distinguish it from other property in the area, do we agree that there is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of our ordinance and the specific application of the provision to the property? That is a mouthful. So do we agree that there's not a fair and substantial relationship between the public purpose of our ordinance and this, and what they're trying to do? I'm gonna pick on you, Brian.
I say yes.
Thank you. Adam?
I'll keep it short and sweet, yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
And myself, I agree. And finally, is the proposed use a reasonable one? Adam?
Not to that last person that was on the spot to park. No, I would say yes. I would say yes.
Adam? I'm sorry.
I'll say yes again.
I'm sorry, Adam. Say yes again. Sorry, Ann?
Yes.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
I concur. So we don't have to go to B because the criteria in subparagraph A1 and A2 are met. So we can entertain a motion on this application.
Wait, let me flip my pages. I'll do it, I just gotta find the number. I'd like to make a motion for ZBA 23-013 that we accept the variance at 471 Old Homestead Highway, with reduced number of parking spots.
Do we have a second on that?
I'd like to amend it before we go to a second.
Okay.
If we just, or at least ask a question on her motion, if we just leave it open-ended like that, they can reduce whatever they want. We need to put a number to it, right? They're approved for 93.4, they want to chop it to 60, so the number is 60.
Okay.
At point of order, Mr. Chairman, the request is for a 33 stall reduction. Is that not specific enough?
Yeah, but in the motion, I didn't know if we had to
Oh,
specify.
yeah, I was
And the only
vague.
reason why I asked that is because it's in the evidence presented to us is 93.4.
That's what they thought they were going to be required based on their map.
Right.
Right.
So okay, 60? So
60.
I'd like to
But you're
make
right.
a motion
Yep.
for ZBA 23-013 for the variance at 471 Old Homestead Highway that we accept 60 parking slots.
I'm adding 63 spaces, okay? Based on-
60.
63, oh, 60, sorry.
Where 93 would be,
Right, 60.
we're
Got it.
required. Okay. All right. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Brian.
We didn't. Second. Lisa seconded, so Ann has a motion to approve the variance application, been seconded by Lisa. Any questions on the motion? Good. All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right. A little bit closer, a little bit
On
closer.
behalf of Greenleaf and TF Brand and Dr. Webb, we appreciate the opportunity to come to your community. Thank you.
Thank you.
What is your shovel and dirt estimation
Hopefully this fall.
this fall?
Yeah, we'll be submitting to the planning board July 20th and DES the 20th, so.
Speak that.
Thank you.
Other business, we have a meeting schedule amendment.
So, I realize some of you were not here last month, but I had a casual mention of, could we change your meeting time and day of the week from Mondays at 7 p.m., third Monday of the month, to the third Thursday of the month at 6 p.m.? And I'm glad more of you were present this evening, because at that meeting, it went over well, but I don't want to change your schedule if that doesn't work with the members who serve on this board. And so if you guys are amenable to that, we could have it on the agenda for a change in the rules of procedure, because that's how we would bring this about for next meeting. And then it could go into effect as soon as August, if you guys are agreeable, or we can push it out until September.
I'm 100% against it. It would completely conflict with everything I do to try to make these meetings. I travel for business, and I try to stick it on one side of the weekend or the other. Thursdays, I'm almost never here, so that would kind of define my role going forward here pretty specifically. So I would be against that if, so.
Is there a day of the week besides Monday that,
Monday at 7 o'clock is great.
well, what was the reason for the change?
To have it more in line with the planning board meeting schedule, so when we're posting legal ads and butter mailings and all of that, it would make that all line up, and it also prevents having planning board and ZBA in the same week, because this happens every 3 months. We have ZBA and planning in the same week, which is challenging for staff.
Mm-hmm.
Could you move the week, Sarah? Would that help to accommodate that? Keep it on Monday, but move it to a different week?
So that move the week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So third Monday.
Right.
Well, you're on third Monday right now,
Oh,
and the third Monday coincides with the fourth Thursday many times a year. Which is okay, we don't have to change it. Figured I'd put it out there. Nothing ventured,
Just didn't stick to the wall.
Yeah, I don't think my answer's changed. My answer is I travel a lot for work as well, so if I'm in town for the Monday, I'm in town for that week.
I see.
Generally, when I'm gone, it's the whole week, so whatever's easier for everybody else. If I'm here, I'm here. If I'm not, I'm not.
Yeah, I'm just one person on it, but it conflicts with me, so I'm not for it. That's my thoughts.
Would it always conflict with you?
Not always, but enough to matter.
I didn't hear what you just said. What'd you say?
Is Eric still on our group?
He is still an alternate member. He's not participating in this meeting. He would be on Zoom, he would know if he was there. And I don't know if a schedule change would accommodate him, because he wasn't at the last meeting when it was brought up for a straw poll.
Well, I'm gonna do whatever, I don't, you know, whatever someone on the planning board tells me to do, I'm gonna do. So, you tell me what to do and I'll do it.
All right.
I'm not on the planning board. You're looking at me like I'm supposed to tell you what to do.
I'm not, I'm joking.
I mean, I would say tonight you guys have a really good turnout, but it is actually incredibly challenging to have 5 of you here. So if it's gonna jeopardize potentially having one member who is pretty regular, I'm not sure it's worth changing it if it's gonna jeopardize even one member being present.
Well, I mean, Adam's a better member than I am, so I don't wanna change. Let's make sure he can come.
All right. Any other business from the board?
Yeah, so what did we decide? We put it out there, you put it out there, we gave feedback?
Well,
Anybody know how Bill's schedule fits in there?
We had a conversation about it, and he was in favor of, well, he wasn't opposed to it. He liked the idea of the meetings being earlier. He's not here tonight, so I don't really want to speak on his behalf because I don't have it in writing.
Right.
Is earlier helpful to the staff that's burdened? What?
Of course, but I don't know if earlier accommodates the board.
I don't have a problem with the time.
I don't know. I mean, would 6 o'clock be better? I mean, is that
I
part
like
of
not
it?
coming home at midnight, that's fun.
I mean, earlier would be, I mean, maybe we could compromise. If we can't change the day, maybe we could change the time a little bit.
Yeah.
How does everyone else feel about that? Is that
I
hard
could
on
do
people?
earlier.
Okay, 6 would work.
Of course, sir, it doesn't change the deadlines for submission of
It
materials.
wouldn't
and all
change the
that.
deadlines for submission, but it would change staff
Okay, okay.
Let's say change staff what?
fatigue.
Fatigue.
On
Oh,
the
yeah.
double meeting weeks.
Didn't have too many late nights.
Presumably, if you guys start earlier, you might finish earlier.
Right.
We'll see if it happens, but
Let's see.
Well, if people that want to come decide not to come, then that takes time too. So. All right, what do you guys think? You want to change the time? Or are we gonna still? 6?
6 is good.
I don't have any problem.
He can't make it 6.
No, 6 is fine.
6 is
It's just the day, really. If I'm here, I'm here.
Yeah,
The hour's not gonna make a big difference,
Yeah,
other
right.
than even before 9 o'clock at night.
yeah.
Was 6 okay with you, with your meeting schedule?
Yeah, I mean, it's fine with me. If it stays on the third Monday, I have the water meeting at 5 and I can pop right over here, having that time in between is.
Those meetings don't take very long, do they? There's not a lot being,
Took 7 minutes.
okay.
Bev,
What do you think,
that
6 o'clock?
time's not good for you?
Well,
I'm in the same
I
situation.
appreciate the later
Traveling
time on
Wednesday,
Mondays
Thursday.
because I have the
Yeah.
story
It's just,
twice,
in the middle of the
Thursdays
week
in a
is
row.
uncomfortable.
So I prefer the later time. It's harder for me. I come in from Chesterfield. So that means I have to eat dinner at 4 o'clock in order to get here in time and for 4:30 to get here in time for 6 o'clock meeting.
Well, I'm okay with 7. We could take steps to speed things up a
How
little.
about if we turn these meetings into a buffet and we have food?
Hey, I like that.
Got a couple of drinks going.
Couple of drinks.
Listen, don't do it, you have to do it based on what you need to do, not what I need. So just exclude that.
Well, I mean, I feel bad for people like Sarah and her helper.
It's okay. You do it. It's fine with me. I manage.
6:30?
Yeah, the day and the time doesn't, I don't care, because I'm in town or I'm not, so I don't care.
Right.
Yeah, I don't care either.
What's that?
I don't care, either way. I can do anything, as instructed.
I think Beverly's important.
Aye.
She gets
No,
here,
no,
so.
no.
Yeah.
No, don't.
Oh, yes. No.
Although it is good for you to eat earlier in the day.
Those early bird specials at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
So are you guys back at 6:30? I just wanna,
Would that be helpful to you? Thursdays are better than, the change in the date is better than the time, right, for you?
I would be comfortable picking one or the other. I don't have to have both. I can have any compromise at all. Any compromise at all. And we don't have to change anything also. It was just sort of-
6:58. We're good.
Do you guys, you don't have to answer this, but do you guys get paid extra for coming out to, at night meetings? And why not?
She's salaried.
Just a long day for you.
I'm actually not salaried, but we're not supposed to go over 40 hours a week, so we are paid for 40 hours.
Oh, that's how
And we
it
don't
works at
clock
my
more than
company
40
too.
hours. Regardless of-
Even though you work it, you don't clock
Yeah, I
it.
don't
Right.
like it, that's right.
That's what we
And
call
sir,
it.
your day starts on Monday at what time?
Town hall opens at 9:30 on Monday.
Right, so it's a long day for you.
So she gets there the
We
crack
go
of
to
noon.
9:30, 9:30 work.
That's Sarah at my company, we call pro bono. That's what that's
We
called.
don't call it anything in Swansea, we don't talk about it.
Well, what I'm suggesting was this Thursday doesn't work at all at 6:30 or 6?
I'm either gonna be in the state of New Hampshire or not.
Oh, okay, I see, yeah, okay.
So it doesn't matter what time it is. I mean, if you guys
I
want to do
see.
Thursdays, pick whatever
So
time you
Mondays
want.
is-
So can you zoom in, or you can't because you're on the road? You're doing
It's
stuff.
not a good spot. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
entertaining people, it could be anywhere.
Okay.
What about a small change of 6:30 on Mondays, just half an hour earlier? Just
Yep.
It's a little bit of something. It makes a
I
little
feel
bit,
bad they shouldn't have said anything.
That's okay, let's try 6:30.
Well, I think it'd be more palatable if we left it as it is, or earlier, and then told the town selectmen that these guys gotta come out at night, then they gotta get paid for it. I mean, I wouldn't do it. I'd be like, I'm not coming out unless you're paying me, so I don't know why you guys do it. That's crazy.
are we the only meeting that meets at 7, I mean, the town commissions?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're the only night owls.
What is that?
Well, I
else we
say
got?
only, but
No.
when does ambulance meet?
What's that?
We haven't been meeting. I have no idea when
Okay.
he's gonna call another meeting or not. I
Okay,
have no
When
idea.
does planning meet?
they meet at 6 PM on Thursdays.
And the selectmen meet at 5:30. The Conservation Commission meets at 4 o'clock on Mondays.
And EDAC is
EDA
Friday.
meets at 5 o'clock on Mondays.
So we are the only night ones.
So Sarah, do you come to work later on days that you're gonna be here late?
No.
So I'm giving you permission to do that. You come in at 11.
Well, there are expectations. Anyway, should we call it 6:30 or 7 because we're prolonging this meeting?
Can't win.
Let's talk about it until Monday, 6:30, the next meeting we do. I'm okay with anything. Can we just make a motion to 6:30 on Mondays? Is that
And we
okay?
can change that motion, that could be on the agenda next time, and we could change it.
Want to try one at 6:30 and see
Well,
what it
we
goes?
have to,
Oh, we have to have
we
the
have to
actual text.
post
Yeah.
the change 10 days prior to the meeting where the change will occur. So I would like to formalize, if there's going to be a change, what that change will be. And you guys can vote it down at the next meeting, but you can't amend it.
Right.
So do we have a motion to move it to 6:30?
On the third Monday of the month remaining, keeping it that.
Second to that motion?
I'll second it, and I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
And I'll second that.
I'm sorry, what was, you got me
Let's do
confused.
the first one first.
Yeah.
There was a motion by Adam.
We were voting.
She seconded the motion to move to 6:30.
And then what did?
And, no, we were just fooling around.
Oh, I thought you made another, okay.
She
sorry.
did, but it was one motion on the floor at a time. so.
Okay, got it.
So, motion to move the meetings to the third Monday at 6:30. Any question on the motion? All those in favor, indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
So that's a motion that we would vote on later, that we vote on this later, not that we've just approved meeting on Mondays at 6:30. Right.
You've approved
putting it on the agenda.
putting it on the agenda to have a change to the rules of procedure next meeting, reflecting a meeting time of 6:30 on the third Monday.
Oh, is that what the motion was? To put
Yeah,
it on the
I'll
agenda?
fix it if it
Okay.
comes out funny.
So that really doesn't do much for you, though, right?
Yes, it does, 30 minutes. I will take whatever I can
Should take
get.
whatever she.
Okay. All right.
Good. All right, any other business?
I'd like to make a motion, we adjourn.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.